Hey everybody, happy Wednesday, happy hump day. I keep thinking of, the whole hump day thing. And welcome. I'm Haley Gray. I have got an amazing guest with me here today. I am so stoked and so honored to have Liam James Collins here with me today. So welcome, Liam.
Thank you, Haley. I really appreciate it. Haley, can I throw some of these love hearts in your direction?
Thank you. Thank you. I can give you a half a heart. I have a cat who's giving me a look. If I try to hold up my hand or move too much, she's going to be like, no, you are not moving. So if you guys are on the live, give us a hashtag live. If you're on the replay, give us a hashtag replay. Let us know that you're out there. Give us lots of comments. We love your comments. We love interacting with everybody. So Liam is an amazing speaker. And I just kind of want to shoot, we're going to start this right out of the gate. So Liam, what did you do before you got into this whole coaching space?
Sure. So I was an actor actually for quite a long time. And I got into acting relatively late compared to a lot of other people. I was 19 years old. I woke up one day and I made the decision I was going to be an actor. Now, I didn't know any actors. There were no actors in my family. I had never once acted a day in my life, but I made the decision, this is what I need to do. So I sort of walked down to my local amateur theatre and I just said, look, I've never done this before, but I want to be an actor. And they let me audition for this play. I auditioned for the play. I got a part in this play. And then about 3 or 4 months later, when I'm performing for the first time ever, I'm taking my first ever bow in front of an audience. And honestly, there was only 7 people in this audience. And 2 of them was my mum and my sister. And I felt like a star. I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. And so I went from that play to another play to another play. And then eventually I started getting roles on television and I started getting roles on film. And I really embraced the entire world of acting. And then there was this one moment where I was offered an amazing opportunity to body double for Tom Hardy in the film Batman. And it was just incredible. At the time, it was the biggest movie that there was. It was a huge budget. There was incredible actors on that film like Tom Hardy and Morgan Freeman and Christian Bale and Anne Hathaway. And I was this 20-year-old actor. And I felt like I had made it. I was like, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so anyway, I worked very closely with Tom every single day for 6 months. And then when that film came to an end, I did another film with Benedict Cumberbatch and we had this really great fight scene and it was really awesome. And then I went on and I did some TV for the BBC, but just completely out of nowhere, my acting career just completely dried up. It just stopped. It just completely crashed. My agent stopped calling. I stopped getting auditions. I stopped getting jobs and I didn't know what was happening and I didn't know what to do. And I just moved into this lovely little apartment in London with my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time. And I had no way of paying my rent because if I wasn't acting, I wasn't getting paid. And so I was in panic mode at this point because, as I say, the auditions were very few and far between. But I thought to myself, what I need a way of being able to pay my rent and go to an audition if there is an audition available. So I became a mailman, a full-time mailman. And at first I was like, look, it's just a part-time thing. And, it's just going to be a stopgap. It's only for a short period of time until I get another good role. But then all of a sudden, 1 week turns into 2 weeks, 2 weeks turns into a month, 1 month, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. And I was like, oh no, this is it. I'm just backed into a corner. I'm a full-time mailman. And respect to the mailmen out there, it is a great job. And in all honesty, I did quite enjoy it, but it just wasn't my journey. I felt like it wasn't where I belonged. But there was one day that just completely just sent me off in a completely different direction. And it was the straw that broke the camel's back. Now, this one day where I went into work, I was covering somebody else's round, right? So it wasn't the normal round that I usually do. And on this round, as I was sorting out the packages for the day, there was this one package that had this one name on it and it required a signature. And it was actually a package for Tom Hardy. because he lives in Richmond, which was this area of London where I delivered the mail. And I hadn't seen him for years at this point. Like, Batman was years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And all day I'm thinking, what am I going to say? Is he going to recognize me? Am I going to reintroduce myself? What's he going to think now that, like, I'm not working in films anymore? I'm now a mailman. And so I was worrying about it all day, and I knocked on his door, and he opened the door, and he didn't even recognize me. And I couldn't even bring myself to say, hey, Tom, it's Liam. We worked on Batman together all those years ago. And at this point, I'd lost a lot of weight. My hair grew, my beard grew, and I just looked completely different. I was feeling really down. I was feeling really bad about myself. I was feeling very lost and directionless. And the sheer fact that he didn't even know me, like, he didn't even know who I was, didn't even recognize me. I didn't introduce myself. Instead, I got his signature. I walked off. I went home and I quit. And I quit that job that day. And fortunately, leading up to that, I started to be introduced very slowly to this idea of mindset development, and this idea of coaching, and this idea of the whole world of Tony Robbins, Paul McKenna, the greats who stand on stage and talk very openly about what they're thinking, what they're feeling. And I was really getting into that at the time. And I'd started to play around with the idea that maybe I could do something like that. You know, maybe I could motivate people. Maybe I could help people increase their confidence. Maybe I could help people find fulfillment. But I was questioning it the whole time, because I was like, yeah, but who am I to do that? I'm just this failed actor. I'm just this mailman. Who am I to motivate people? But that one day, in that one moment when I quit my job, I made the decision that I was going to venture into something a lot more fulfilling, and that I was going to fully embrace this coaching world and this coaching mindset. And so what I did is I fully jumped into it. I took every little bit of savings that I had, which wasn't a lot at the time, and I bought some courses. I attended some seminars. I got some qualifications. I was just like, threw myself into the whole acting space, the whole coaching space. And I became a coach. And that's really where the whole journey began, because now all of a sudden I'm this self-employed coach. I'm just about to start this business of which I've got no experience, and I don't know what the future holds, and I've got no money left. So I was in a very vulnerable position, but finally I was going to do something that I felt warranted my time and my efforts and my attention. And that's really how I ended up starting my very first coaching business.
Wow. You know, and that, I think, is true for a lot of people who get into coaching, is that, you know, you go through soul sucking jobs, you know, you go through other things that you think are your life's choice. I did the same thing in engineering, architecture school, you know, 25 years as a software engineer. And lo, here I am, people saying, you know, hashtag Haley pushed me.
Yeah, I love that.
Haley,
you know, pushed me.
Because I get my jollies out of nudging people up a hill, strapping a parachute onto their back, finding their skills and their strengths, and flinging them off of the side of a cliff.
Absolutely. Yeah, good. This is like what we always say, Haley, isn't it? Especially in this world of entrepreneurship, we always say, jump off the cliff and build the parachute on the way down, because there's so many people that don't take immediate imperfect action and sit back and wait for things to be perfect and wait until they've already built the parachute, but they don't even know if they're going to jump yet. You know, jump off that cliff, or get Haley to push you off the cliff, and then build the parachute on the way down. Is a lot of power in doing that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's incredibly powerful. So you started coaching, and then what?
So it was not easy from the beginning.
Oh, I'm sure it was not. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people think, oh yeah, you get this coaching certification, I'm going to go out there. And these coaching schools don't mostly teach you how to get clients. It's just here's your next life's calling. Here's what you're going to do. And you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so empowered. You know, I got my, do whatever coaching, or my, whatever coaching certificates. And then what?
Exactly. That's the thing, isn't it? And it's a big part of what we've built with the coaching masters, which I'll tell you about later. Because like not having that solution, right, is really damaging. You know, if you're only qualified but you don't know how to get clients, then of course you feel like you're stuck. So I was in that position. So I had become qualified. I was fueled with this new ambition and this desire to help people and this want to create fulfillment for myself and for other people. But then there's the whole journey of, right, now you've got to find clients. Now you've got to be able to promote yourself. Now you've got to understand what your niche is. Now you need to know exactly how to build this business, which of course I didn't. So I really was just learning on the job, kind of scratching by as I was figuring all of this stuff out. Unfortunately, I had gained a couple of clients, you know, almost by complete fluke, people that had just gravitated towards me the moment I said, this is my new path. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm passionate about. And those one or two clients, you know, they gave me that sustainability to just carry on, just to pay the bills, pay the rent, and also to figure out how this stuff works. But the biggest thing for me at the time was that I was still questioning whether or not what I was doing and what I had to offer was powerful. That was a real thing for me. I was like, am I able to do this to a high standard? Does it really work? Can I really help people? Can I really change somebody's mindset for the better? And it's almost like I was kind of looking for something to prove to me that what my mindset techniques were actually useful. And there was this one event in my life, which is one of the most significant moments of my whole life. And it was June 3rd, 2017. And I'd only been a coach since, I remember this so clearly, January 1st, 2017. That was the day that I quit my job and I started this business, which is interesting because it's a proper fresh beginning, you know, January 1st. But on June 3rd, I was at home with my wife. And at the time, we lived above this little pub in the middle of London, just at the foot of London Bridge. It was a very busy pub. It was very popular. And on a Saturday night, there was always, honestly, thousands of people in the immediate area because it's like in the heart of London. And there was this one evening where it was a really warm summer's evening and we had all of the windows open in our apartment and we literally just lived the first floor above the pub. And we were leaning out of our window and we were just like watching the world go by. And everyone was happy. Everyone was in a good mood. There was like love in the air. There was laughter in the air. There was like the clinking of glasses and the sort of chatter of like smiling faces and that, you know, when there's just a nice atmosphere. And so we're watching the world go by and then completely out of nowhere, the whole atmosphere changed, almost like it was poisoned by something. And you can almost feel it when the atmosphere changes. And it had gone from laughter and people being very jovial to fear and terror and anxiousness and pain. It's almost like you can feel that. And so we're looking because to see what's actually happened. And we see people running. And all of these people like running behind cars, running down into the underground, running down streets, trying to hide. And we were still looking and thinking, what's going on here? We just couldn't understand it. And completely out of nowhere, we saw people being stabbed, like right in front of us there as we looked down onto the street, people being stabbed in the back, in the chest, in the arms, in the face. Just, I'm talking like complete havoc, horrible horror movie scenes. And what was unfolding in front of us, which we didn't realize, was the London Bridge terror attacks of 2017. It was one of the worst terror attacks that London has ever seen. And of course, when you're living inside of this, you don't have any idea what's actually happening. You're just seeing this chaos. So there's these men that are attacking all of these innocent people who are just there to have a good time. And all these police cars were driving straight past the scene because they thought the attack was happening all the way at the top of London Bridge. And by this time, they'd made their way down. So this one man, and he was so brave, this guy. I saw him like fighting off the attackers with like a chair that he'd found in a restaurant. And he flagged down one of the police cars and he was pointing inside of the market, which is where the attackers were. And this one police car like screeched around the corner and then went just out of my line of sight. And we heard all of these gunshots. And so in the immediate moment, I went to close the windows of the apartment. But this one police officer shouted up and said to me and my wife, you need to get out of the apartment because we think there's a bomb in the pub that you live above. And so that was awful. Not only was this attack happening outside, there's also the potential that there's this bomb in the pub that we live above. But then this other police officer said, don't go anywhere because there's, you know, people being attacked down here. And it was like a tennis match, like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it went on.
Stay or do you go?
Exactly. Which way do we go? Both options are terrible. I'm there. I want to protect my wife, the person who I love the most in this world. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to protect her or myself. And these crazy things are going through my head. Like, if a bomb goes off, what's going to have the least impact? Is it going to be the bed? Is it going to be the sofa? Is it going to be the kitchen counter? Until eventually this police officer said, you absolutely have to leave right now because we think there's a bomb in the pub. So we walked out of our apartment, went down the stairs, and immediately as we opened up the door, there was people just lying, just dead in the street. And we had to step over them. And some of them were being like, the ambulance people were trying desperately to help them, but just it was almost hopeless at that point. Exactly. And we had to run all the way down this road. And then eventually someone let us stay at their apartment for the night, and we couldn't go home for days. And the reason why that story sticks out so much to me, and the reason why I tell it in relation to my business, is because for the days and the weeks and the months and the years after that, it would have been so easy for me to have developed a mindset of hate, fear, anger. You know, not only easy, but it actually would have been understandable. But I knew so much in that moment that if I was going to survive this, and if I was going to be able to help my wife who was having panic attacks, that was so bad she couldn't breathe, I knew I needed to develop a mindset of forgiveness, of understanding, of love. And that could only happen through the coaching techniques and the NLP techniques that I was teaching to other people. And so even today, right, even today, I go through those techniques on a daily basis just to be able to push through those moments after having witnessed that attack. But one of the things that I was able to take from it is that I knew in that moment what I teach people is very, very powerful. The techniques are strong, they work, they're useful, they're powerful. And my proof was that I was using them on myself daily, and I still do daily. So I took that and I really ran with it, and I really thought, no, I must help other people with this kind of thing. Because after having experienced something so horrific and being able to push through it with my own mindset techniques, it gave me that assurance I needed to think, this coaching thing, this does work. This is powerful. I can help people. And it was a really significant moment of my life that still affects me today. And it still proves to me that my coaching is powerful because I need it. Every day I need it. This is one thing I talk about a lot of the coaching masters, is that I'm not in this coaching space just because it's a good space to be in. I'm in it because I need it. I really need it for myself. I want to be able to give that gift to other people, you know?
Right. So Mel Gorzada asked the question, what are the techniques?
Yeah, I mean, that it's a great question. So what I focus on really, really heavily ever since this experience is I focus on three very, very specific things. So the three things that I focus on are the images inside of my head. So literally my imagination, right? What images do I create? The voice inside of my head, i.e. my internal dialogue. How do I talk to myself? And we all do that. Doesn't make us crazy. It makes us human. And the third thing is what am I doing with my body posture? So what I've come to discover is that these three things, when working in conjunction with each other, they heavily affect someone's emotional state. So I found myself in emotional states that did not serve me after that attack. Emotional states of fear, emotional states of anger, emotional states of apprehension, emotional states of depression as well. And they really were not serving me. But the first thing was to understand it was just an emotional state. It wasn't who I am. It wasn't part of my makeup. It wasn't what I was destined to feel or be. And in that case, if it's an emotional state, I can change it. So the next thing that I did is I made the decision, what emotional state do I want to feel? Right? Okay, I understand I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling scared, and that's what I don't want. So if that's what I don't want, what do I want? Okay, and I made one firm decision in that moment that the emotional state that I did want to experience was an emotional state of relaxation. I wanted to feel relaxed in the face of this adversity. So what I did is I thought back on, right, times in my life where I felt very relaxed. What was I thinking? I.e., literally, what were the images that I used to create inside my mind in order to feel relaxed? What was I saying to myself? I.e., what's that voice inside my head saying? And how does my body posture react to relaxation? So then what I would do is I would essentially copy it. And even though it felt completely fake at first, even though it felt false and it felt like I was performing, almost like putting on an act, if I was able to essentially follow those 3 steps and essentially pretend almost that I was relaxed enough on a daily basis and turn it into a habit, I was able to push myself away from the emotional state of fear and anger and into the emotional state of relaxation. But it really does come down to paying close attention to what those 3 things are doing. Because when we find ourselves in an emotional state that we don't want or we don't like, we all too often feel as though there's nothing we can do about it. And we think, well, that's the way it is because of outside circumstances. That person is making me feel this way, or that event is making me feel this way, or this place is making me feel this way. But really what's happening is when there's a person or a place or an event that you think is making you feel a certain way, what's really happening is that they are affecting those 3 things. So they're making you think a certain way, speak to yourself a certain way, and stand a certain way. And if you can really take control over what those 3 things are doing, you can gradually start to take control over your emotional state and put yourself in an emotional state that's a lot more useful for you. And those 3 things have just been a godsend for me. They've been a blessing. But it takes some time, it takes some practice. And the first step of it is just awareness. Mm-hmm. Having awareness around what are you thinking, what are you saying, and how are you standing? And are those things serving you or are they not serving you? Are they creating a positive emotional state or a negative one? And how can you change it? So yeah, that was absolutely key for me since the attack, and it still is key for me every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that being aware of what you're saying to yourself, what you're thinking, picturing, everything.
So key.
So how do you change, so you go, okay, crap, I'm in this headspace.
Yeah.
And, that internal voice, and she says, thank you, is not being real kind to me right now. Because a lot of times we're meaner to ourselves than any of our friends or family members would ever be. And we tolerate it from ourselves.
Yeah.
How do you flip that narrative?
I love that question. And it's so true, isn't it? This is the surface way, right? In terms of this is the sort of quick little tip, right? But quick tips never really create the sort of deep work that we need to do to create long lasting change. But sometimes the quick tips really do stick into our heads. And a long time ago, someone once said to me, if you wouldn't say it to a friend, don't say it to yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, that really actually hit me when someone said that. Mm-hmm. And I thought it's true because like you just said, Haley, we have the awful habit of not being as kind to ourselves as we would a friend, and it does affect us. So that's the first thing I want everybody to do, right? I just want everybody to take that on board. Anyone who's listening to this, if you wouldn't say it to a friend, don't say it to yourself. That's rule number 1, right? Mm-hmm. That needs to be the bottom line that we live by. But to answer your question on a deeper level of how do we actually change it, right? So let's focus on that internal dialogue first and foremost. This first step, which is the first step of the majority of coaching techniques, is awareness, right? Awareness of the state that we're currently in. So if you're finding yourself in an emotional state that you don't want or you don't like and it's not serving you, and you're feeling as though that emotional state is being created because of that internal dialogue, what you're saying to yourself inside your head, we must first fully recognize exactly what we're saying to ourselves. It's no point having it as being a bit vague. There's no point saying, well, I think this is the kind of thing that I say to myself, because there are literally going to be very specific words in a very specific order. We say things to ourselves that create a trigger, an emotional state. We have to know what those lines are. Then once we have raised awareness around of what we're actually saying to ourselves, we need to then make the decision, how do we want to feel, right? Okay, so I don't want to feel depressed. I actually want to feel excited. And at this stage of the process, we might be thinking, yeah, but that's going to be impossible. I'm feeling very down. I'm feeling very depressed. I can't even imagine feeling excited right now. And you know what? If that's what it is, don't beat yourself up. Don't beat yourself up yet. Just go with the process. So make the decision, okay, I want to feel excited. The key, the golden nuggets lie in the past. The answers are in the past. Thinking back at a time where you did feel the way you want to feel, and vividly remembering what were the things you would say to yourself back then that created that sense and that emotional state, and replicating that. And at first, what it will feel like is it will feel like you're literally just saying lines to yourself inside your head that don't mean anything, that are not true. It's very much like when people first start doing affirmations and they say, oh, it doesn't feel real. It just feels fake. It just feels like I'm saying lines. And the key is in the repetition, relentless repetition. If you relentlessly say something to yourself inside of your own mind enough times over enough days, relentlessly, there will become a time where the surface cracks and you start to slightly believe what you're saying. And if you then continue to relentlessly say that inside your head, then eventually there will come a time where you start to really believe what you're saying, until eventually you fully embody what it is you're saying. People tend to not go that far because they think if it feels fake at the beginning, it's always going to feel fake. And it's just not the case. We need to relentlessly repeat what it is we want to say to ourselves and what it is we want to eventually believe. You won't believe it initially at first. You may not even believe it for a few days, a few weeks, maybe even a couple of months. But eventually, if you repeat that thing enough times, you will start to believe it. And if you start to believe it, then you'll start to feel it. And if you start to feel it, then it's real. And no one can tell you that it's not real. It's real because it creates an emotion. So yeah, that repetition is very key when it comes to this sort of space.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. You know, repetition is key in so many things in business. A lot of people will say, well, I'm no good on camera. You know, I need to lose weight. They come up with every reason why I can't do X, Y, or Z activity in their business, within reason. I'm not asking you to do illegal stuff, but they come up with every reason in the book why they can't do stuff.
Yeah. Exactly.
And sometimes just doing it enough times, you're like, oh, that's not so bad anymore.
100%. That's the thing as well. Like I was a few days ago, I was in a film studio recording a training on camera fright and being fearful in front of the camera.
That's a big one.
And it's a lot of the time when people, I can guarantee a lot of the time people look at people like me and you, Haley, and be like, okay, they do lives a lot of the time. They're in front of the camera a lot of the time. It must come really easy to them. But it's because of the repetition. Do you know what I mean? That's the thing. It's like we've pushed through the discomfort and the fear. And we still feel the nerves, of course, but it's like we keep pushing through it. If you do it enough times, it gets to the point where it starts moving into the realm of comfort. It's the same as anything. Like you mentioned, okay, whether it's with weight loss or whether it's something you want to do with your business, something you want to do in your personal life, repetition is the key to developing comfort, regardless of how scared you are at the beginning, regardless of whether or not you are shaking in your boots and your palms are sweating and you've got a dry mouth because you are so scared at the idea of, say, stepping in front of the camera. Really, and I'm an NLP trainer, I'm a coach, and I'm saying to people, really, the only real way to overcome all of that stuff is by just doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it again so many times to the point where it starts to feel comfortable. And it's the same with the internal work. It's the same with the internal dialogue, the internal images, the body posture. I talk a lot about biofeedback to people in terms of pick the emotional state you want to feel, decide what your body does when you're feeling that way. So let's say you want to feel confident,
Mm-hmm.
and you're thinking back at a time where you have been confident, and you say, okay, when I'm confident, my shoulders drop, my chest is out, my head is up, my arms are relaxed. Adopt that body posture, because what will happen is biofeedback will kick in and your body will send messages to your brain to say, hang on, brain, come on, wake up now, because we're feeling confident. And at first it will feel fake and it will feel false. But again, repetition, eventually it creates that connection and eventually you start to believe it. So I'm pushing repetition constantly with my clients. Like, it's one thing that they cannot ever shy away from, and they have to fully accept if I'm going to be their coach, because repetition, it really is the key to mastering anything. So, and that's,
I believe it's the key to success in business.
100%. Definitely. It really is.
I know the first few times I did videos or lives, it sucked.
Oh yeah, but you did it. That's the thing. You did it, and you did it again, and you did it again, and you did it again. You didn't think, okay, well, that really, really sucked the first time. It even sucked the second time, even sucked the third time. You carried on doing it. Yeah. exactly. And you carried on doing it. And then it got to the point where you're like, I feel comfortable doing this. And then you got to the point where you're like, I feel good doing this, and eventually that comes because it comes through repetition and developing that skill.
Oh, this is fun now.
Yeah, exactly. And the internal work is exactly the same. People, they seem to have this misconception that if it doesn't feel good straight away, then it must not be for them. And I'm always pushing the narrative that is not the case. That's definitely not the case. It's not going to feel good initially, and it won't feel good for the first few times, but we'll get there if it's something that you want and something you desire. But we need to relentlessly repeat the process. It's not pretty, it's not polished, but it's the way it is.
So what is how do you get people over that hump? Like, what is the motivating factor that gets them to go through that pain and that fire, walking over the proverbial coals?
Yeah, definitely.
How do they get there?
It all comes down to purpose, right? Everything that we do in this space, which is a difficult space, comes down to purpose. In the coaching space, when you're taking entrepreneurs as well, this is the Women's Entrepreneur Network, is a great example of entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs, they already have that thing that makes them a bit different, right? They've got that fire, they've got that desire. They know that they don't want to live by the status quo. They want to create something. They want more freedom. They want more, right? Which I fully celebrate, because I think that there is enough abundance in the world and the universe that we should want more, and we can create more. And the more that we create, the more we can give. So I'm a big, I want to celebrate that all the time. But with entrepreneurs as well, there almost seems to be more fear, more doubt, more challenges that come paired with the aspirations and the goals and the desires. So that question, Haley, is brilliant in terms of how do you overcome that? Because when you're working with someone as a coach and you're helping them grow their business and you're helping them improve their lives at the same time, breaking down barriers, right? Breaking down limiting beliefs that have existed since a very, very young age, eliminating and diminishing negative emotional states in certain environments, like having people terrified to speak up on stage, or feeling anxious at the idea of doing a sales pitch, or literally about to faint because they're going to do a Facebook Live. These things are buried down really deep, right? These fears, these apprehensions, these barriers, they're very, 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 they're buried down deep. So getting people to overcome that is tough. The journey is tough. It's not an overnight thing, and they need to be willing to move through the fire to get out the other side to reap the rewards. And there's only one thing that will make them do that or have them doing that, and that is a deep sense of purpose. I actually don't avoid the question why as a coach. Now, there's lots of different versions of coaching, and there's lots of different ideas, of course. And in some versions of coaching, it's the question to completely avoid, because it will only ever create justification. So if you ask your client, if your client is saying, I'm feeling really down, and you ask them why, they'll just give you a whole bunch of reasons as to why they feel down.
Right.
But I use the question why like a shovel when it comes to finding someone's purpose. Like if I ask someone, why do you want this? Why is this important to you? And they say, well, okay. So I say, why do you want to build a business and be an entrepreneur? Because I want freedom, right? I never, ever, ever stop there. I never stop there. I'm always aiming to get 5, 10, maybe 15 levels deeper than that. And I will continuously ask why with my shovel, why, until they get to the point where they're so deeply connected with such a strong sense of purpose. I no longer need to convince them to move through the fire. I don't need to convince them to overcome those challenges and that hump, because the purpose will get them there. That when people say you're not tired, you're uninspired, and it's so utterly true. If we feel like we're lacking motivation, we're lacking energy, we're lacking focus. And as entrepreneurs, we've all felt that. Of course we have. When we wake up in the morning and we're like, God, I don't want to do any of this stuff today. I don't want to send those emails. I don't want to make those calls. I don't want to take those meetings or do that stuff. That stuff is never a problem when the purpose is deep and you're connected to that purpose. So that is the thing. That's always the thing that gets people over the hump, is the deep sense of purpose.
Absolutely. I agree. And you have to really, really be in touch with that, because being a business owner is something else.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah,
it is.
So what is the biggest obstacle you've overcome in your business?
So the biggest obstacle I've ever overcome is in my personal life that is directly linked to my business. So it was only a year after the terror attack when I was at home one day and I was on the phone to my mum, and we were talking about just random things, and her doorbell rang, and she went and she answered the door, and I thought it was the postman, because she gets a lot of Amazon packages, and it's like, it's probably Amazon. And she hung up the phone and she said, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. And she actually called me back 30 minutes later, which I didn't think was strange at the time, but I didn't really think about it. And then when she called me back, I couldn't understand what she was saying because she was crying so much. I thought the phone was breaking up. And then this police officer's voice came on the phone and said, Liam, you need to get your wife and you need to come to your mum's house. And I immediately, of course, I'm asking why. You have to tell me. And they were like, look, you just need to get your wife and come to your mum's house. And so I kept asking why, because of course, at this point, I'm in a real state of panic. Naturally, of course I am. And they said, well, you need to come to your mum's house because your dad has stepped in front of a train and has taken his own life. And honestly, Haley, like my dad was, and in so many respects still is, of course, my best friend. Like, I'm talking an older version of me, loves life, loves his home, his dogs, his kids, his grandkids, full of life, always the one to crack a joke, hates having any sort of tension in the air, and will just want everybody to get along. And I swear to God, if anyone ever asked me to just rank everyone I've ever met from least likely to most likely to take their own life, he'd be least likely. Like, it was a complete shock. And so I said, well, how do you know? How do you know my dad's stepped in front of a train and killed himself? And they said, well, put it this way. I was like, prove it. And they said, well, someone has, and this person who stepped in front of a train has your dad's wallet, ID, car keys, glasses, and his car is parked at the train station. And I swear to God, even in that moment, it was more feasible to me that he had been mugged and someone had taken his bloody clothes, his car keys, his glasses, drove to the train station and stepped in front of a train. And it was only the day after that when they let us see my dad's hand because when my dad stepped in front of a train, the train was moving 100 miles an hour, and what was left was his hand. And I would recognize my dad's hands from a mile away. Like, my dad had these big, strong, like manly dad hands, and he was a plumber his whole life, and they was always bruised and his nails were busted. And I just knew in that moment it was him. And I tell you what, like, honestly, Haley, being completely open and transparent, because that is a big part of my coaching as well. And it's a big part of what I've built at the Coaching Masters. I really hated myself after that. I really did. And I used to say, like, how can you call yourself a coach? How can you help people? How can you get people to move through challenges and limiting beliefs and barriers? And you couldn't even do that of your dad. And I found out more about the circumstances of his death. And I'm still, of course, devastated by the circumstances. But it turns out that he had phoned his doctor, right? A doctor who he had never met in his life, a doctor who didn't examine him because he'd never met him. And he said to his doctor that he was struggling to sleep, right? He couldn't sleep. And this doctor prescribed him a combination of sleeping pills and antidepressants, which he'd never had, right? This combination of pills he'd never had.
And then didn't follow up.
Precisely. Didn't follow up.
In combination.
Yeah, exactly. And we found out later that this combination has got a very, very high suicide rate. So he'd taken these pills, he'd stepped in front of a train. And again, I'm in this position where I'm like, right, I'm going to go one of two ways here. I'm either going to completely crumble, I'm going to shatter into 1,000 pieces, and my whole life is going to deteriorate badly, right? Because it was easy for me to have done that. Or once again, I need to walk my talk, and I need to actually coach myself through this every day if I'm going to. And the terror attack was only about a year before, and I was still coaching myself through that. And I chose that path. And still now, to this day, I coach myself daily just to overcome the devastation of having lost my best friend, my dad, in such a horrific way. And so that affected my business, of course, in so many different ways, because at first it started to just completely damage it, in the sense that I couldn't even think straight for weeks. And then in the end, again, much like most things, I thought, this is either going to have a devastating effect on who I am and what I do, or I have to allow this to contribute in a positive way, because what are the other options? Right. So I use it as a real driver now in my business. You know, it was something that I had to overcome in a big way, but I now use it as a driver. And I tell the story a lot of my dad. I share it a lot in my own business. I share it a lot in my coaching. And I get messages all the time from people that have maybe listened to my podcast or listened to an interview and said, when you told the story of your dad and you gave me some techniques, it helped me, or it helped my dad, or it helped my mum. And you know what? That's the reason now, to me. Like, that has to be the driver behind it. It has to be, how many people can I rack up who have said, you've helped me, and I was in a similar situation, or my loved one was, and now we're okay because of the story you told or the techniques you gave. That has to be the currency of this entire thing. And being completely open again, and this is being completely transparent, in all honesty, if I could genuinely take away all of the help given to everybody else and get my dad back, I would do it in a second. Right? That's me being completely honest. But that's not the reality that I'm in. That's not my situation. My dad's gone, and he's not coming back. So what needs to take his place in many respects and fill that big void is helping as many people as I possibly can with this one very powerful thing that I have, which is coaching and mindset development and NLP and using this to create fulfillment and abundance and happiness and a future for people. That's now what I have to do. And that's what I want to do. But that was easily the biggest challenge I've ever experienced, and probably ever will.
Yeah. No, you have to, for me, in some ways, with my own family situation, I have to make the sacrifices worth it.
Yeah, of course.
There has to be some upside to this.
Of course. Because what's the other option? That's the thing. It's like we have two choices, don't we? We can allow it to create nothing but stress, negativity, devastation, pain, or we can make the decision that it's going to be something else. And I see it as I see it in many ways. I always feel like I have the choice, of course. I don't ever want to give up my own sort of empowerment of having choice, because it's better to have choice than no choice. But in a situation like that, I think one of the choices is completely pointless. Like, why allow it to just create nothing but pain and devastation when it could be utilized to create something good and to create something empowering for other people? So that's always the pathway I'm going to take.
Yeah. It's certainly one of those paths in the road where you as a human have to decide which one you're going to go down.
Of course. Yeah. And many of them.
And it keeps it, and it's like the event that keeps on giving, right? You keep having to make that daily decision.
Yeah.
To fork to the good as opposed to fork into the ditch. Every
day, big time. A technique that and this is a very simple, very, very simple one, but it's one that I do every day that has allowed me to push through the loss of my dad every day. It's a gratitude technique. Gratitude being, in my viewpoint, the thing, like the magic pill, the emotion that really does solve so many problems internally, externally. And so what I needed to do, and what I still do every day, is get myself into the headspace of, okay, version number one, right? This reality is that I've lost my dad. But there very well could have been a reality where on the same day I lost my dad, I could have lost my dad, my wife, and my mum, for instance. Say, for instance, in like a car accident. And also having the understanding that there are people that have actually experienced that. Like, there are many people out there that have experienced that level of loss. And as crazy as it may sound, if I can really get myself into the headspace of what it must be like to be in that situation, out of the two options, I'd actually pick the option of what I'm actually experiencing, which is only having lost my dad. And that, a lot of people think it just seems crazy because it's like, yeah, but you lost your dad to suicide. How could there be anything worse? There's always something worse. And that is it's actually a very empowering shift to have in your mindset, having the realization that there is always something worse. But not only that, there are people out there in the world that are currently experiencing the version of that, and they would swap places with you in a second. So what I do is I pick something that I do on a daily basis, like religiously. And my thing is brushing my teeth, right? Because I know I brush my teeth twice a day and I always do it in the exact same place, which is the bathroom. So what I do is I pick 3 items in the bathroom that represent 3 things that I would be very, very, very devastated if I was to lose. So what I've now done is in my bathroom is my shower, my toilet, and my sink, right? So the shower is my wife, the toilet is my home, and the sink is my daughter, Posey. And every day I'm looking at those 3 things, the shower, the toilet, the sink, the shower, the toilet, the sink. And I'm thinking, Claudia, Posey, my home. Claudia, Posey, my home. I have those things. They're here. I have them. They're in my life. I haven't lost them. And I think to myself, if I was to lose them as well as my dad, I would want to only have lost my dad. And then I find myself in that reality. So I've taken something that's a devastation and I've turned it into something that I actually would wish for in a different reality. It's a very difficult mindset shift to create because you're trying to be grateful for something that's really awful. But what's the other option? The only other option is to feel the devastation. And I don't like feeling the devastation. It's not a useful emotional state for me. So instead, I like to feel the gratitude. And that's what I do daily still to this day to get through that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do the same.
Brilliant.
I have a similarly but different situation, but I absolutely agree. I do exactly the same thing.
So important.
And I see families every day that are in the opposite situation. And I'm just grateful for where we are.
That is so important. And you know what, as well, it's like in this age of manifestation where a lot of people are very, very scared to even think about the thing they don't want. I find there to be a lot of power behind thinking about what I don't want. Like I know, of course, there's a fear that it will become attracted into your life, but I just feel like there's so much gratitude behind thinking about what you don't want and then coming to the realization that that's not your reality. There's so much gratitude to be had there. You know, it's almost a shame to not think about the things that we don't want, because I would often on a daily basis think, well, what would it be like if on that day I lost my dad, my daughter, my wife, my home? And then I almost go, but I haven't. I didn't. Amazing.
Right.
This is incredible.
Yeah.
This is the reality I would prefer. And then I can feel gratitude in that moment.
Yeah. I've had people tell me to not talk about my family situation with my daughter and her health and, you know, the likely other outcomes that could have happened. And they're like, oh, but you're making it worse. And I'm like, no, I'm celebrating the fact that it's not worse.
Yes.
And that we're all still alive.
That's key. That celebration is key, because that's where the gratitude comes from, you know. And I totally back that up, Haley. I think that's an important thing to do, because all the time it's contributing towards the emotional state that does serve you, and it keeps you away from those emotional states that don't. You know, an emotional state of gratitude. I mean, I would challenge anyone to give me a good reason as to why gratitude is not useful. It just seemed ultimately useful on a constant basis. If we can exist, not all the time, because we're human, you know, emotions change, but if we can create a sense of gratitude more often than not, that also is one of those things that creates energy, creates focus, creates motivation. It brightens up your existence enough for you to move forward and push forward and build a business and build a life. And so it's something that should be celebrated each day.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what's a parting thought that you would like to leave people with?
A parting thought I would like to leave people with is that, considering there's entrepreneurs in this group, everyone inside of this group is an entrepreneur, clearly. I want everybody to start thinking about adopting a coaching mindset. Now, that's not to become a coach, it's to adopt a coaching mindset. And they're two different things, right? So as entrepreneurs, you're leaders, you're business owners, you're thinkers, you're doers. And a coaching mindset is very, very, very specific. When you start to learn different coaching tools and techniques and questions, what you're doing is you're always gearing yourself towards finding the solution rather than focusing heavily on the problem. You want to know what it is you do want instead of what it is you don't want. And that might seem simple, but actually it's quite a significant mindset shift to have, because a lot of the time as humans and just as people in general, we are so clear on what we don't want. But the problem with being clear on what we don't want and not having taken the step towards what we do want is that our brain kind of cancels that out, because that's almost like me saying, don't think about pink elephants. Just don't do it. Whatever you do, don't think about pink elephants. It doesn't matter how many times I say the word don't, right? It just really doesn't matter.
You're going to be viewing pink elephants.
You're going to be viewing pink elephants. So when people are saying, I don't want to feel tired, I don't want this lack of motivation, I don't want my business to fail, I don't want to screw up this meeting, all you're doing is planting that inside your head. The coaching mindset is saying, right, I understand what I don't want. What do I want? And then gearing everything that you do towards what you do want and away from what you don't want. If everybody here can just adopt that one simple coaching mindset, slip into that, everything can change in quite a fast amount of time as well. So that's just what I want to leave everybody with. Focus on what it is you do want instead of what you don't want, because it really does change the momentum of where you go.
Absolutely. I love it so much. Cool. How does somebody find you in the online space? Because I know that there's going to be a lot of questions about that. And I know you're going to be here with us quite a bit in the next little bit, but I want to, set people up with, hey, how do you find Liam?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad that you said that, Haley. So this is going to be quite exciting for everybody watching this. So you are indeed going to see some more of me inside of the Women's Entrepreneur Network, which I'm very excited about. I'm going to be talking at the summit, which is going to be really awesome. And there may also be some free training as well that I'm going to deliver inside of this group over a few days, actually. So that's going to be really, really big. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, you can find me on Instagram. So my Instagram is at liam.james.collins. So it's at liam.james.collins. I put a lot of content out on my Instagram. I do a lot of training videos. I try to add as much value as I possibly can. And of course, just go ahead and Google the Coaching Masters as well, and you'll see us all over the place. Go and check out our website. Go and check out all the stuff that we're doing, and you'll be able to check that out via my Instagram as well. But like Haley said, sit tight, because there's going to be some free training that I'm going to be delivering inside of the group, which I'm really excited about.
I am really stoked about it as well.
Awesome, Haley. I appreciate the invite.
Awesome. Thank you. This is fun. And, please, y'all, reach out to Liam, follow him on Instagram. I'm excited to have you here. Thank you for joining me today. This has been amazing.
Cheers, Haley. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Take care.